our genes create in us that which is similar. Yet each of us has characteristics that make us different, unlike anyone else. It is these differences that hold clues to understanding the genetic connection between medicine and disease.
Have you ever wondered why some people respond to medicine while others don't? Or why one particular medicine works for some people,
3, please.
but not for others? At GlaxoSmithKline, we've asked these same questions, and we believe the answers lie somewhere in our genes. GlaxoSmithKline is a research-based pharmaceutical company that makes new medicines. And we want our medicines to benefit as many people as possible. By determining why some people react positively to medicines while others don't, we can help doctors choose the right medicine for the right patient. Ultimately, this information will be helpful in the discovery of new medicines targeted for specific diseases. GlaxoSmithKline is conducting an international research program that will look for clues that can only be found by focusing on the very essence of who we are, as determined by our genes. The key to the success of these innovative studies is people. Volunteers who are willing to contribute to the health of future generations. By finding clues that will tell us how and why certain genetic variations affect various medications, we hope to change how we go about developing new medicines. This type of research is called pharmacogenetics. Dr. Alan Roses is a clinical neurologist and the Senior Vice President of Genetic Research at GlaxoSmithKline.
Pharmacogenetics ought to be thought of as simply the genetics of drugs and the reactions to people. There are a lot of diseases where we don't have any treatments at all. We want to find out how to treat them. There are a lot of diseases where there are drugs that are not very effective. We want to find drugs that are more effective. There are a lot of diseases where people take drugs that have serious side effects. We'd like to be able to prevent adverse events.
Dr. Philip Riley is a geneticist, physician, and attorney.
This research is important because a very significant fraction of people don't respond to medications the way we hope they will and the way we know that others do. There's variation in how people respond to medicines. If we understand the reason for that variation, we can hopefully develop medicines tailored to do a better job in those individuals who don't respond as well to one drug that had been given before. What we are seeking is to understand genetic information to allow us to give better medicines and medicines that fit better to individuals who have certain genetic variations.
As you consider the important decision of whether to participate in the study, here are some facts to think about. First, let's look at how genetics makes us who we are. Dr. John Medina is a geneticist and molecular biologist at the University of Washington School of Medicine in Seattle.
We are a mosaic of jumbled genes, and everybody's slightly different. We have certain requirements that we have to make. We all have to have eyes, and we all have to have noses, and we all have to have mouths, but we all have different eyes, we all have different noses, and we all have different mouths.
It's these differences that are a direct result of our unique genetic makeup. We know that 99.9% of our genetic makeup is exactly the same from one individual to the next. It is only that 0.1% that makes us different. But consider that we are made up of 3 billion genetic base pairs. And even though we are genetically very similar, there are an estimated 3 million small differences in our genes that are what make us unique. Now that we know what genes do, let's see what they are. At conception, your mother's egg was joined with your father's sperm. During the process of fertilization, the union of egg and sperm produced you, an individual with 46 chromosomes, half from your mother and half from your father. The chief component of chromosomes is the chemical DNA, which determines everything from the color of your eyes to your risk factors for disease, as well as how your body responds to medicine. The long, double-stranded sequences of DNA comprise a gene. Scientists believe that there are approximately 35,000 individual genes in our bodies. Inherited characteristics change from generation to generation because of the genes passed on from our parents and the effects of environmental conditions, such as exposure to radiation, viruses, and chemicals. And it is these changes in our genetic structure that account for the differences we have, even from our parents, in things like our eye, hair, and skin color, our height, our weight, as well as our sensitivity to medicines. And that is the unique challenge posed by this pharmacogenetics research.
It wants to know how variations in human genes that are normally distributed across the population, that are not necessarily associated with a particular disease, affect how medicines work in the human body. So it represents, if you will, a whole new level of refinement in understanding how to make medicines work better to help people avoid illness or conquer illness.
Some of you may be wondering, what exactly is involved in this research?
What do I have to do to participate in the research?
If you decide to take part, there are 3 things required of you. First, you'll need to sign the consent form for the genetic research. It's separate from the consent form for the clinical study. Many of the questions you probably have are answered in the consent form, and additional information is available from your study physician. Next, you'll provide a blood sample. This sample is taken just like other blood samples in the clinical study. The samples are coded with a reference number for identification and may be studied for up to 15 years. In this genetic research, your blood sample will be used to see how your genes affect the way you respond to the study medication.
What is his first name? Bruce.
Lastly, medical professionals may ask you questions about your medical condition, your medical history, and your family's medical history. If collected, this information will also be coded to correspond to the blood sample.
What is his name?
The investigator and site study staff will have access to your name.
What about his?
At any time, you may withdraw from the study and request the sample be destroyed. While the sample will be destroyed, the information collected to that point will be kept for research purposes.
Are there any risks involved?
There is no physical risk other than that associated with drawing blood.
But what about any informational risk?
The risk that an unauthorized person might gain access to your genetic information is minimal. GlaxoSmithKline maintains strict confidentiality by having protective measures in place to safeguard your privacy. The only people with access to your medical and genetic information are GlaxoSmithKline employees, people working with the company, ethics committees, and people who work for government drug agencies that approve certain medications. No one who is not involved in this research study, such as employers or insurance companies, will have access to the information.
How is this study going to improve healthcare?
GlaxoSmithKline expects that the results of this study will lead to the development of medicines that are not only more effective in preventing and treating disease, but also cause fewer side effects.
Certain people are going to respond better to certain medications than others depending upon the particular genetic profile they were born with. Do we know the genetic profile they were born with? Not yet. That's why we're after it. But if we can find out that genetic profile A works best with medication A, we'll always give that person medication A and not maybe B, C, or D.
It is our sincere hope that thousands of people around the world will share the desire for a promising future of medicine and volunteer for this or other studies.
In the end, the decision to join or participate in research to develop new medications is, I think, an act of kindness by one group of people to another, or one generation to the next. When you think about it, the medicines that your doctor has available to you today would not be available if people in the 1940s and 1950s and 1960s, 1970s had not agreed to participate in studies that might not have given direct benefit to them.
The baseline of the patients participating in clinical research is the same for them as it is for us. We all want to stop disease.